Instacart shoppers know groceries. They know that you can't make guacamole with rock-hard avocados. They know how to quickly find those peanut butter pretzels you can never find. And they keep you in the know by giving you updates about your order along the way. Let Instacart shoppers help take shopping off your plate so you can get time and energy back for what really matters. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Instacart. Add life to cart.
Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio, thank you for tuning in. All right, I'm broadcasting at home from my remote studio location. We had brand new studios, and within a week or two, we were packing up to go home because of COVID-19, and the pandemic has shifted everybody's schedule. What it's also shifted are the news headlines. That's what I like about it, because I'm getting more information now about UFOs and Bigfoot and paranormal and ghosts than ever, because of some of the shifts in the headlines. And it's not that there are more of them, it's that they stand out because there's so much repetition and so much one topic going on between politics and the pandemic. There's really a lot of room for deviation, and that's what we're looking for. At least that's what I'm looking for, because I like the things that are unusual, that are off the beaten path, that are weird, odd, and for me, a lot more normal. For me, they're real. And so that's what I wanted to get into with this hour, talking about some of the new normals that we're experiencing right now. Some people are having more paranormal experiences. They're having more intuition, premonition type things, where before they might have been too busy to acknowledge it or even notice. The other night, this week, I'm working on something, going through looking for headlines and looking for topics and getting my guests lined up. And I had this kind of a crack sound on the bed. And I'm thinking, what? Okay. And it just kind of caught my attention. And it was one time. Well, then the next night, same thing. Crack only more than once. And this time I know, something's trying to get my attention. So I go to my husband and say, hey, he's in the TV room. There's a crack on the bed. Okay, he says, where's the cat? The cat is not doing it. But it's a good reality check to say, okay, check all the knowns before you start jumping to conclusions. So the crack happens again, and I'm like, okay, fine. The dog comes in. Jack, he comes in, he jumps on the bed, gets on the pillow facing the headboard, and stares at the headboard, almost like he's having a conversation. But I say, hi, Jack, when you're trying to get his attention, and he won't look at me. He continues looking straight at the headboard, which is where I was hearing that sound. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to solve it. At least the dog, for me, just like the UFO thing, validated that, yes, I'm having this experience. It doesn't make sense, and I might as well go to sleep because I'm not going to get any answers right now. And possibly, on that other plane, the dream plane, there might be some answers. No, what happened was the next day. The next day, I'm trolling through looking for stuff, and I find a new, and I think it's really excellent. I want to recommend it to you because this is one of those little, there are a lot of YouTube videos and self-promoted individual, independent documentaries on all different things, ghosts, Bigfoot, the whole 9 yards. This one happens to be about the paranormal element and aspect with Bigfoot. And that is a really, I think, helpful way of looking at this because it gets into vortexes, it gets into the paranormal stuff, and they're saying, this is the name of it, the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. They're saying there's a lot more to this than just a one-off. Instead of, it's not just about Bigfoot, it isn't just about aliens, it's not just about paranormal and ghosts. They're all part of the same thing or part of a similar arena that we are experiencing. And for me, when I've had my encounters, there's been a big paranormal element involved with that. The barometric pressure shifted. I had heightened awareness, senses, smell increases, all these things. It's hard to put it all into words, especially in a short amount of time. But these things, when you experience it, there are some hallmarks of the experience that when you hear somebody else talking about it, you know their story is legit. That's what happens for me when I have these experiences and encounters. So in the middle of this show, they're talking about how the Bigfoot activity increases. They're going to set up the camera, the audio, try and get pictures. And honestly, once you've had an experience, you don't really, or at least you don't question it the same way you might have before. And so dragging out the camera and all the paraphernalia isn't your first go-to because you already know it. You don't have to prove it to yourself. It's real. Trying to prove it to others is really difficult, even when you have everything that you think would help them understand it. If it isn't in their consciousness, it's very hard for them to make that leap. And so it's a believe it or not, and so it goes. Anyway, in this film, there's the sound while they're taping. They've got the audio rolling, and there it is, crack, a crack sound. Now, it could be a rock thrown against the metal of the building. It could be anything. But what happens is there's several of those cracks in response to certain things that's happening while they're filming. And the crack is the sound I heard. I thought, now, something's happening in my room, possibly, in my space, possibly, or in my head, possibly. I don't have to know. I know I heard the crack, and then it is on this film. And so that's why I'm recommending the film, The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed, because it has some kind of relevance to what's going on right now. And the people in it are sincere. They're I think, telling you to the best of their ability, their authentic, firsthand accounts of experiences. That's what I look for. One of the other people that I really like and following is Deep Prasad, and he is a physicist, a quantum physicist, and he's somebody who the article he just wrote on Medium I'm going to refer to, because this is where he was asked to, according to him, to brief a prominent North American aerospace defense organization on how to detect and track hypersonic UFOs. All right. Now, his main job, he says, is heading a small quantum computing company out of Toronto. All right. So he's in an arena where he's going to be exposed, especially after his experience of having out of the broad blue aliens, people he could not identify, who appeared out of thin air and pretty much did a tap dance on his chest, proving to him that reality had a whole lot more room for real. Okay, it was a bigger room than he thought, especially after having that happen. It changed him. It does all of us. When we have this kind of encounter, it's like, wow, what else is here? So not only do the ghosts make a difference, the Bigfoot, Sasquatch make a difference, the UFOs, ETs, aliens, and of course there's cryptid on somebody's chart. I haven't had that experience to my awareness, but I have had the fairy elf, that kind of thing. It's all these things. Once you've had an experience, nobody can take it away from you. And then you wonder, okay, what was the purpose? What was the point? Just like Japan. Now, with the UFO information coming out from the Pentagon saying, oh, yeah, by the way, 2017, remember those things that you all were talking about and we had nothing to say about the subject at the time? Yeah, they're ours and they're legit. Only they're not ours. There are videos and they're legit. Okay, they're UFOs. We don't know what to say about it except, yep, they're UFOs, and go from there. Interesting timing. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and all of a sudden this becomes relevant. That's what I said. These things stand out when they are part of the new normal. That we're talking about these kinds of things more because more people are revealing. There's a guy, Patient 17, is another film I want to recommend, because I'm going to be dealing and interviewing with Steve Colburn, who is the partner of Roger Lear, who's the focus of the movie, film documentary, Patient 17. And in this film, we find out not only are they researching Patient 17 with the implant, like we talked about with Terry Lovelace, and watching this, so it's a little graphic, watching them remove the implant from his shin, we also find out that Steve Colburn, who's the partner of Roger Lear, the person in charge of this research, also has an implant. This stuff right now is beginning to become, I think, relevant because more people are talking about it. And the guy who had the implant removed said he kept quiet about it because the only people who are interested in it are people who had the experience or know someone who's had the experience. And that's as far as it goes. So how do you talk about something nobody else wants to hear about and nobody can even fathom as being real? Well, you just keep talking about it. And that's why I mentioned John Foster UFOs, because he has something that relates to what is going on right now. And it's so fantastically authentic because he's written it down and he had the whole thing documented in writing when it happened. And we're going to get more into that in the next break because I'm out of time right now. Wendy's Coffee House, UFOs, ET, Paranormal, Bigfoot, it's all here. Talk Radio, KCMO. Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Yeah, I get carried away. So back to John Foster UFOs. John Foster has written 3 books. I've interviewed him. I have 2 interviews right now in the archives. One is a shorter interview. The other one's a longer interview. And this is, he was having an ablation done earlier this year. I wanted to get the interview ahead of time so that we wouldn't run into any problems if there were complications. Not only that, we got it before all the COVID-19, the pandemic information. This is amazing how the timing has worked out this year in terms of like even our move from one studio to the other under the wire before things started being locked down and we were supposed to shelter at home. So back to John Foster, 1953, and this is one of the latest posts on his blog. He's got 3 books, and you can catch up on any of it or just go to the blog and johnfosterufos.com and read the posts. This is the one that happened in 1953, and I refer to this because of my own experience and seeing how easily our reality can be influenced and changed right in front of your eyes. He calls it the extent of ET interference in our economic culture. And you might refer to it as the hidden hand, because in 1953, he was 15. He says he was at a state park in Nebraska. And the night before, they'd had a lot of UFO experiences, sightings, that kind of stuff. There were things happening. And so the next day, mid-afternoon, he and a friend are out at the park, and they see this booth appear. It just manifests. This booth manifests, and then there's a voice that says, that's saying, asking them to come on over. And so they approached. The voice was talking about an experience they could have, a special trip with orphans who were already in the booth. And so his friend looked in and saw that there were some Spanish American people there, and he said he was freaked out because this is so odd and so unusual and it's real, that he said no. And John was a little bit more of a risk taker and said he didn't really know why he got in, but he did. So he goes in, and then they take him on a little trip. That booth it goes up, flying or floating, and they take him to another place. In the meantime, they're showing them a video or something on the screen. They're hearing a lecture about. He says he doesn't remember most of the lecture, but about that new subdivision development that's going to be built in Denver. And the reason for that is because middle-class Americans, middle-income Americans have no place. They can't afford homes. They said that the middle class was being basically shut out of home ownership. And so they were going to help build affordable housing to make sure that and he didn't know who they is, but it was going to happen, that there were going to be more opportunities for middle class America to have housing. And he saw the subdivision in Denver, and then later on in life, he realized that after he had his memories, everything came flooding back in 1986, he realized they lived in that very subdivision, his family, for about 3 years or so before they moved to Nebraska. And he said they had told him that he would have an opportunity to help build houses there if he wanted to. Well, he didn't build the houses there. He did when he moved to Nebraska. So all this stuff was told to him in 1953, and then it happens, even though he had completely forgotten. It was something that he was in some way, shape, or form not allowed to remember or blanked. And what he said in terms of remembering, that was when he decided he was no longer going to be part of this clandestine program unless they told him the purpose. Unless they said what their agenda was and made that clear to him, he said, I don't want anything to do with it. And even though he has done that, he has had sightings, he has some awareness of this thing continuing, but not his part of it. And as a matter of fact, when he stopped, that was where the health issues began, the 3 heart attacks, and that shut him down for a little while as he recovered, as he was told by these intelligences that he would recover. So all of this stuff is worth talking about because there's more going on here, and our reality is bigger. And I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories. I'm not going to get into any of that, because what I am looking for is people who've had authentic encounters, one-on-one, personal experiences with something they either can't identify or can identify and it doesn't fit in our norms. It's an alien, okay? There's a whole lot of places to go with alien. Somebody says there's like 53 different species. How many ever there are enough that we don't have the full pieces of the puzzle to work with. We don't know if they're coming from another galaxy. We don't know if they're interdimensional. And that brings me to the cracking I heard with that movie, knowing that something here was prompting me. something here was trying to get my attention because I've already dealt with the Bigfoot Sasquatch stuff, and I've done some interviews. Kawani Lapsaritis is one of the ones that's really fascinating with the psychic Bigfoot information and psychic Sasquatch. And then of course Board Camp Crystal Mine. If you go down and check that place out, or you should just go online and check out their information. They're doing some new work with their web where you're going to be able to send messages if you would like to. And I just talked with them recently about that. I'll maybe need to check back in and see how far that's going. But the information with that also coincided with having been told while I was on site to pick up a rock in response to me honoring what I was telepathically told to basically watch my step in a certain area and be very mindful of where I was walking, because this space was a sacred space. And telepathically, I heard that message to be mindful of my instead of traipsing all across somebody's lawn, just to be careful. So I did. I followed in the footsteps of the person who was leading me. And when I was done, it was like, this is a thank you. And I felt at that time that it would be, I didn't want to take something that didn't belong to me. I didn't think it would be respectful. And again, I got the prompt, pick up the rock. And so the third prompt, so sure enough, apparently they know how stubborn I am. The third prompt, I look down and there's a rock. So I pick it up. The cool thing about this is under that rock, and the rock happens to be shaped like a little foot. All right. It's shaped like a foot. And under the rock looked for perfectly, like rock on top, the crystals. So the little overlay of crystals on the bottom of this foot-shaped rock. And that was a way of saying thank you for me listening to the direct of watching my step where I was going through this space that for them was considered sacred. And so when you start realizing that you're getting a lot of messages from all different directions, really hard to do that when you're plugged into a TV or plugged into the 9 to 5 of having to have all of these projects done over and over and over, and no time to breathe, no time to distance yourself, no time to meditate, no time to just quiet your mind and be clear of all of the requirements and all of the have-tos and shoulds and must-haves, and completely, totally, in any way, shape, or form, directing you outside to a false narrative, all right? And that isn't I don't want to say that as a negative. I want to say that everybody has a certain role, and in your job, you're expected to perform to a certain level, and all these things are important, in your family, social obligations, all that. But what happens a lot of time is the thing that we don't make time for is personal introspection, is just saying, okay, I need a break. I need some downtime, because that's when these things happen. Those quiet moments, even if it's in the shower or the bathtub, those quiet moments when all of a sudden you have an epiphany. It's like there's this creative element that is squashed if you don't make time for it. And that's one of the things right now, that we are given an opportunity to make time for what's happening. Now, premonitions are the same kind of thing. That's what happened in the fall. I was given some information, and the information sometimes can be dark, especially if I project or am worried or anxious about where this is going. What is the outcome? What is the purpose? And so, like other people, I was getting information that things were going to be changing, and we would not be the same when this changed. How did I deal with that? That was going to be important. Well, the first thing I did was keep quiet about it, okay? Because there's no sense of preemptive panic. So I really didn't know where to go with it except to pay attention and be ready to change schedules and do that kind of thing, especially when it said that things would not be the same once this happened. But other people were getting that kind of, the premonitions and that insight. How do you pay attention to insight? The first thing you do is make space for quiet time. Right now, we've got the space. Right now, there's the opportunity. So I'm going to talk about what happens when you get information that you believe is not helpful and you're not sure how to get it across because the person is asking you in terms of a reading to help them with a problem or a project that they have either become stuck on or that's a real crisis in their life. There is a way to do that. That's next. Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Okay, I talked about the premonitions or the intuitive hunches, those kinds of things that happen. And sometimes you get a prompt and you're not sure where to go with it, because for me, it'll be like a snippet, a piece of information. It might be one word, like the acorn experience. And I don't remember how much I shared about that, but I did write about it on a couple of blogs that I do. So we'll go back to that real quick here. And it's one of those things where all of a sudden something was going to happen and I had no clue what this related to. Now, looking back on it, it makes sense that what was happening at the time was really going into the dream plane and the waking plane. And a lot of this is just, where we have our mind focused and centered at the time. And I wasn't sure, given this is a real unusual experience, I'll just share it and we'll go from there. And when I blogged about it, I put everything here's a work in progress. And some interactions are going to defy explanation when a definition is conjecture. And so you have to just allow it to proceed until you are able to make sense of it. So I had been in the bedroom. I was asleep for a couple of hours, and the dog woke me up, which is interesting. The dog is usually, or cats, they're animals involved in these prompts. And I woke up, so I'm kind of half awake, half asleep, and I felt a tap on my head, like at the very top, like something would fall. If you're sitting up, something would fall on your head, and it felt like an acorn. Yeah, I know, not a walnut, not a bowling ball. All right, acorn. So that's what I got. And so there's this thing on the top of my head. Okay, well, that's not the weird part. The weird part is when all of a sudden I've got this image. And this yellow image, like if you're looking at the Batman, when they have all those little kapow, boom, all that, it says, gotcha. And the voice comes with it. Gotcha. And the image, the yellow image, and that tap. So all those things, the visual, the color cue of a little splotch of bright yellow, and the voice that says, gotcha, and then the tap on the head. So 3 ways it's trying to make a point, trying to make a dent in my reality so I'll remember it. And honestly, if I hadn't written it down, the part that would not be with me is the part, that yellow splash. And you'd think that would be so memorable and so obvious that I would immediately, oh yeah, that's, recall it. No, that one was gone. So the fact that I wrote it down helped me imprint it and help me remember it as I review it. And part of this is keeping a diary, keeping a journal has been super helpful, because I could see where I was projecting versus where I was receiving information. And sometimes with a premonition, you have to be completely, totally non-interested. You cannot have any kind of emotional attachment to the outcome. It has to be, okay, yeah, sure, see what happens and go from there. Neutral. So when you're neutral, you can get information. If you have any kind of expectation, anxiety of any kind, emotion, it colors the outcome and it colors your information. You are not able to receive. And recently, they've repeated this when it comes to remote viewing, is expect the unexpected. Prepare to be surprised. If you are surprised, then that's a good clue that you're picking up on stuff that doesn't come from you. And when I first started getting information way back at the very beginning, 20 years ago, working with the nightlight and getting information that way, intuitive, telepathic, channeling, whatever you want to call it, it's information I didn't have access to in my conscious awareness. And that was also a big part of it, was the surprise of, wow, this actually makes sense. And it isn't anything I knew. So there it is, the acorn. And the timing of this was when we got our first case of the COVID-19 in Kansas City. So the first case is announced, and that's about March 9th. And my dream coincides with that, the dream and the interesting happening of the acorn on the head. Well, I can go back and make a lot of associations with that. The tree and the tree of life, all that stuff. But the indication was that it was time for us to bring our A game. All right, gotcha. Okay, it's like being in a relay and having somebody hand you the baton. You're next. You're the next leg of the relay. Well, that's what we're in right now. We're in a reset where things are not the same as they were just even since January, the first of the year. All of a sudden, we're in a completely different arena. And the things that are happening to us right now, we're really having to go in blind. We haven't had in our lifetime this kind of extensive and every single facet of our life disruption, magnitude. Saying the recent headline was, "This is the worst economy ever." Okay, well, yeah. Okay, that's pretty serious. But at the same time, in terms of what's happening on the social scale, disrupting, people, you can't see your grandkids. You're supposed to step back from seeing other people in groups. You're all of these things that then redirect our activities and our focus to making new patterns and new starts of maybe things we wouldn't have considered as essential 3 or 4 months ago, such as Zoom, FaceTime, all these kinds of things that we're now doing remotely. We're using more of our technology, and we're also gardening, watching a lot of Netflix. Oh, yeah, there's a new one coming up called Upload on Amazon. I'm looking forward to that. That's where the guy dies, and he uploads his consciousness to the afterlife, digital afterlife. And, of course, it's run by multi-corporations, and the corporations decide how much fun you're going to have, and it's as much fun as you can afford. Yeah, there's always a catch. Anyway, but that one looks like fun. In the meantime, I also wanted to recommend some other video documentaries to watch while you're experiencing your downtime that are off the beaten path, that aren't the same old. You got plenty of access to that, but the ones that don't always get the accolades, the highlights, anybody talking about them are the independents, and especially when they have to do with the UFO content. It's hard to find the real original thinkers with that, because they're all going back to, oh, look, it's up there in the sky. I'm telling you, it isn't up there in the sky. There may be something up there, but it's happening right in front of us, right around us, beside us, and we aren't able to get it because we have not evolved our consciousness yet to that level, and we're going to. But right now, it takes that step, that leap, that ability to take advantage of the downtime and expand your awareness, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through programming, using the techniques with the Monroe Institute, helping you develop either your remote viewing skills or your telepathic skills. Those kinds of things give us an edge, an advantage to picking up this information. And for me, that was what the Sasquatch Bigfoot encounter was about, because I was being telepathically guided to do certain things. And I had that experience in 2009, and I would call it also alien, but that's not a good word, because especially when I'm going back and doing my dotting the I's and crossing the T's with the experience with John Foster UFOs, all of the things that happened with him also had that telepathic, and sometimes right on, it seemed like everybody could hear it in broad daylight. There was one experience they had at a Nebraska football stadium. There it is. It's happening. Some people were aware, some people had no clue, and other people were involved. So there's a lot going on right in front of us, and it's a matter of whether we can shift our own reality bubble and blow it up large enough to get the other stuff that's just right outside on that parallel plane that's happening alongside us. That's the cool thing about that little show, sitcom that's going to be on Amazon. I talked about Upload, because at one point he's at the funeral, and on the other side of this glass, this barrier, he's able to witness the funeral. And that happens. I've seen that happen with my own grandparents. They are present, and we just don't see them. So all this stuff to me is giving us an opportunity to talk about things that we might not have been able to talk about so freely, because people were not experiencing on a wide scale the downtime that makes these things stand out. That when you see something that you aren't normally used to seeing, you have to stop and go, what? What's that? That's why I call it a reset. The reset is saying we're going into a new normal. This is not going to be the old normal when we come out of this. We're not going to be able to have these massive groups like we had with the royals, with the chiefs, with that, royals too. Chiefs having a million people down there in a crowd, all having a wonderful time. And that's the old normal for a while. What we have now is going to be an interesting way of repatterning, reframing our reality so we can feel safe and protected and not infect each other in the process. We'll come back with more Paranormal, Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Okay, the paranormal stuff. And I'll get to the referrals for some cool documentary content. But the paranormal stuff has to do with what we believe, and it doesn't matter, okay? Because when it's real, it happens, and then you understand that it doesn't matter if you believed it or not, because reality happens. One of the headlines recently, the Indonesians who were quarantined in a haunted house apparently didn't like it. They didn't see any ghosts. One got bored. The others were so frightened because they had weird dreams. That'll do it. They wanted to go home, and they promised that because they had broken the quarantine rules, they would not break the quarantine rules again. They did not want to go back to the haunted house. So believe it or not, that reality shifted their life actions. That's some of the stuff in the headlines right now that I think is really more interesting as these things are happening to us on a larger scale, and people are kind of tuning in. And so there are people making fun of them, saying, well, they didn't see any ghosts. That isn't what it's about. You don't have to see a ghost to have the experience, all right? They shift your reality. You experience it and go, okay, enough. It's the thing is, what you're looking for is looking for you. That kind of thing is once you become aware of them. And Ingo Swann had this. I think it's a really clear picture of how this works. When he was remote viewing the moon, he saw some entities up there. And the fact that they were naked humans is kind of interesting, too. It let him know that what he was looking at was very odd and out of character, and what the heck? So he's looking at them. Then he realizes that there are a couple of them over there, and they're looking back and pointing at him. And he realized that even in his remote viewing psychic persona aspect, they were aware of his presence, which kind of gave him a little turn. So that's my experience as well. And just because your abilities are extra and enhanced, it doesn't mean you're the only one. So when you enter the room, the people already in the room see you. And it's a very good lesson for accountability for what we do. And coming into that paranormal thing of what happens when you get information ahead of time and you know something that maybe might not be in the other person's best interest. And I am changing some of the details of this because I don't want to disclose I want to keep it anonymous. So the person had lost a significant person in their life, but from what I saw, it had to do with a situation where that person was compromised, and in a situation that would be dangerous for anyone in that family to have contact, because it would put them out of their league, and that wasn't necessary. This was a deal between the person who was deceased and that soul group. And so with that, I had to say in a nice way that this isn't your game. This isn't on your dance card. This is something that your significant person needed to deal with as part of their life and part of their karma, part of their soul, for them to progress, to be able to have this encounter. But if you go in and you are involved in this, it's a completely different game, because then you make it your problem and your soul issue. And maybe a better example is when I talked about the stuff with the Maitreya, was that karma thing. Is I had no really connection to karma until me being in a situation of being attacked and thinking, okay, I can take it back and put that person out of commission. That's what it would have done at the time that I had this ability, this superhuman strength response for myself to be able to escape, and then in my own reality, take it back to the person who was trying to harm me and make them incapacitated. It would have killed them, all right? And so when I heard, standing right beside me, a loud voice that said, karma, that was a game changer. That's when I knew I've got a horse in this game, and I don't really need to take it to the next level. So sometimes when we go out and think, well, I'm going to fix it for somebody else, whether it's vengeance, it's some kind of retaliation, and you're putting yourself between that person and somebody else. Usually it's retaliation. It's not a defense is okay, but when it turns into offense and you are the person in charge deciding whether this is good or bad, making a judgment call, we don't always have the big picture. And so that's what a lot of this is about. So in terms of that person, I needed to help take to the next level of this game, this scenario, drama between the person that you loved and the adversaries was theirs. And this person would appreciate it and love it for you not to be involved. And you have to go forward and let go. That's tough. It's really tough to hear, especially when somebody you care about has been killed and you're feeling like there's something you can do because you know some of the game. We don't have the big picture. And so in the same thing, when I got information about this being something that was going to change our lives, for me to say immediately, hey, this is coming, this is a big deal, and it's going to be, it said, it kept beyond your wildest dreams. And then they also dropped the shoe with, and I forgot about that. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. The other shoe was, and nightmares. And when that little piece of word language came in, I'm like, uh-oh, this is going to be serious. What is it? They're really good at doing the charades. They give you a piece of the puzzle, a piece of the information, and then your mind fills in the blanks. And what you don't want to do is let your mind fill in the blank. All right? You can't jump to conclusions. You have to take it with, that's the information, what next? Okay, so in other words, what I had to do is go, it's going to be a change, a huge change, and we're going to respond. And that is up to us. How we respond is how we level the playing field. That's how we create. That's how we advance. That's how we progress, evolve, how we respond. So that's what's happening right now, the responses. The videos that I think are really helpful for people who are interested in the alien, ET, UFO, Bigfoot stuff, Witness of Another World, because that deals with, and I've seen some experiencers say, oh, that's just too tame, there's nothing to it. Well, what it deals with for people who haven't had the experience is the post-traumatic stress, PTSD, of having an experience you cannot share with anybody else because it's too far out there and they won't believe it and it'll make them uncomfortable. All right. Well, so for 40 years, he stuffed it. And there are a lot of people out there, the same that we started out with in the program with a guy who had the implant, same thing. And Terry Lovelace, I've interviewed him, same thing. These implant things are frightening. They're beyond our awareness. We don't have a clue why and what to do about them. So the thing you can do is maybe possibly take it out and go forward. But it's still happened. Yeah. So that part of it deals with the post-traumatic stress of having these encounters and knowing they're continuing to happen. And we're just part of that. That's part of what's happening for us. And the other thing, there's Humano. The same guy produced Humano. It's dealing with traveling or shadowing a shaman in South America. Fascinating film. Also, the David Paulides film. This is an interesting one because it takes on that Bigfoot unexplained encounter. They don't ever mention Sasquatch or Bigfoot, but they also kind of get into portals and things that are shifting our reality that we may or may not be aware of at the time. And the one that kind of centers on that is a Missing 411, The Hunted. Check that out. And then Love and Saucers, David Huggins. Now this gets into somebody who believes and has experienced the ETs are shaping him in some way, shape, or form, and he's it's a lot more graphic in some ways. Tale of a guy who for all of his life had the awareness of being in the company of aliens, and they look kind of like us and don't at the same time. So his experience is very unique in that it draws that whole picture. What I thought was interesting about all of this is that right now these films are getting more attention because of our pandemic. All right. So because of it, we're looking at different pieces of material and questioning and curious in ways that we wouldn't have been before. We're kind of switching from the same old and going back to, well, what else is out there? Well, there's a lot out here. My own website, Wendy's Coffee House, there's plenty of stuff to get into just in terms of exploring and investigating and giving yourself room for thought, or at least, saying there's something that I might be interested in, and then see what comes up, see what happens, and see where you're led, because that's the intuitive aspect. There's something I need to hear, and that's what that little sound I heard had to do with me paying attention and taking the next step and seeing, well, what is this about? What is this about? So when I heard that crack at the bedpost and my dog said, yeah, I paid attention to it. Okay, coming up, some more interviews. One of them, Steve Colburn, is one of the subjects of the film Patient 17, and he'll deal with the cliffhanger. Yeah, the show ends with a cliffhanger. Steve Colburn, my upcoming guest. Oh, check out the shows in the archives too. Wendy's Coffee House. Thanks for listening. Stay curious and be well.
When things feel a bit chaotic, Instacart helps deliver milk and sausage. Add a little life to your cart. Get stuff from literally all your stores, from baby wipes to albacore. Add a little life to your cart. Instacart helps get your groceries. Your first 3 deliveries are free.
Download Instacart. Add life to cart. Terms apply.
I'm at the football game. I'm at the grocery store.
What?
I'm at the combination football game and grocery store.
Wait, you're at the football game
What?
and the grocery store?
Nah, I'm at the combination football game and grocery store. Groceries through Instacart, delivered to my door. I don't have to choose between football and the grocery store.